So first I would welcome you all to this Youth Soccer Coach webinar hosted by me, Craig Scott. This is our second one now in the series. So for a repeat from Monday, please find us on Twitter at Youth Soccer Coaches or Facebook at Youth Soccer Coaches for the repeats, guys. Thank you very much. So we encourage questions. So any questions through the chat functions is kindly appreciated, and any questions we'll go back to at the end. I'll hand over to Dean. So Dean's Arrowsmith is in the US at the minute, who will give a background of himself, I'm sure. He will talk about mental health in youth sport. So obviously something very important now in the current situation that we live in. So I'm sure everyone will find it very beneficial.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks Craig for inviting me on. Thanks very much for Tom and Youth Soccer Coaches for hosting this as well. Very excited to share this presentation. I'm a little bit nervous. I don't usually do this, so this is something that's very, very new to me. So bear with me, everybody. Please be kind. If you do have any questions, you can put it in the chat box, and we can answer them at the very end. As well as that, there'll be a little bit of interaction kind of at the beginning. Very excited to share this presentation. As I say, mental health in general is something that is very, very important to me. And mental health in youth soccer, kind of as we're in COVID, as we're coming out of the pandemic, is extremely important, and how we kind of help our kids moving forward. So I'm going to dive right into the presentation. First of all, we'll start with an icebreaker. So just, you can write this in the group chat. If you've got a pen and paper beside you, you can write it there as well. Before we get started, I just want everyone to kind of think about who the best coach you've ever had is, and just write down a couple of traits that you believe made them the best coach, made them your favorite coach that you've worked with. So I'll just give like about a minute, just that people can start. You can write it in the group chat. You can just write it yourself if you've got a pen and paper handy. And then once you've done that, I want you to just write down a couple of traits for the worst coach you've ever had, and the reasons why they're the worst coach that you've had, or why you believe they were the worst coach. I'll give you just another maybe 30 seconds for that one as well. And Craig, if you don't mind, if you can just keep an eye on the comments as they're coming in as well, that'd be a great help, please. All right, and the reason why I'm doing this as an icebreaker is because this is mental health in youth soccer. It's kind of just getting people thinking about, when you think about your best coach and you think about the traits that they possess, it's starting to think internally, do I have those similar traits as a coach? Because that's who you want to be. And then looking at the worst coach, the reasons why, what you're doing as a coach to kind of avoid those same traits and avoid being that person. So before I go into all my details and we kind of get on with the presentation, just to give a quick kind of my answers on this, the best coach I ever had was a Gaelic football coach. I only started playing when I was 13 years of age. Wasn't very good because a lot of my friends were playing from they were a lot younger, but I was made feel included. And probably one of the traits that the best coach had was he inspired me to be better, and he always, you know, provided feedback. He always offered things to me to improve in the game. And then conversely, the worst coach I ever had. So this is probably the main reason that I've got into coaching. When I was U13, U14, I was working, I live right next to the football pitch. Never missed a training session for those 2 years and never got a minute on the pitch. And I always remember one little story before I move on with the presentation. Cristiano Ronaldo had just burst on the scene with Manchester United. I done a step over at training, and the coach told me to stop being a match of the day player. I mean, I wasn't very good, but I always that always kind of resonated with me, and it's something that has stuck with me, that as coaching has progressed over the last couple of years. we're trying to get the best out of kids no matter what their level of ability is. And that's kind of something that I'm going to try and get across in this presentation. And even just talking from mine, when I talk about that, the worst coach as well, some people on this webinar have seen me play. They'd tell you that I'm not very good now, but I don't have the confidence. The coach completely knocked my confidence at U13, U14. I stopped playing when I was U16, when I was old enough to start coaching. Started coaching to make sure that I never made any player feel the same way that coach made me feel. So for the most part, I've done a good job. And it's just, as I say, it's just making sure that, more so about the best coaches, making sure you don't carry any of those traits that worst coach that you've had into your own coaching style. So just really quickly to go over the table of contents of the webinar, I'll do an introduction about kind of my background as a coach. There's 6 areas in mental health that we're going to look at. I'll go over them in a little bit more detail throughout the presentation. So an introduction for me. My name is Dean Arrowsmith. I come from Ireland, currently working as Director of Coaching for AOISO 300. They're United and Extra, so the competitive and academy programs in LaGrange, just outside Chicago. I've 16 years coaching experience. I used to work as club promotion officer with Dundalk FC in the League of Ireland, where I worked in a lot of disadvantaged areas and done a lot of cross-border between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, working in partnerships with Dundalk FC and Linfield. In the last 2 years, I completed my USSFC license and my UEFA B license. I'm actually going to be beginning my UEFA Elite Youth B, which I'm hoping will start late spring, early summer. I've experienced coaching from U5 right up to adults here back home in Ireland and here in the USA. And I'm a founder member of the Head in the Game mental health initiative, which is aimed at helping supporters, players, fans from in the League of Ireland. We founded that in 2020. And then late in 2020, right before Christmas, I done an online diploma in mental health studies as well. So moving on, so mental health in youth sports. And I think, as I said earlier, particularly coming out of COVID, I think this is a very, very important topic. Young players, I mean, adults, we can all sit here on this in this webinar and we could talk about ourselves all day and how COVID has affected all our mental health. I think if anybody says they've enjoyed it, maybe they have. I'm not one to judge, but I think the majority of people that's probably on this, we'll all say that our own mental health has kind of plummeted a little bit in the COVID era. So when we look more at kids, I think the lack of physical interaction, the lack of competition, more time spent in front of a computer with school, in front of a TV, it's really had an impact on players' mental health. And I'm speaking from experience from within the organization that I work at. There's an increased level of anxiety returning to a more normal environment, which again, I know there's some coaches here that coach here in Chicago, that'll be able to kind of understand that some players, we've had players in our club that just haven't come back to play. They're still signed up, they're just not ready for it yet. So I've devised six areas that we as coaches can help our kids coming out of COVID. Before I kind of go into them, I just want to clarify that I'm learning about mental health. We're all learning about it. I'm not an expert. These are just six areas that I've devised based on our program, what I'm working on. And if even just one thing helps people that's listening in today, then that's good enough for me. So number one is create a we, not me, player-centered environment. So that what I mean by that is, as a coach, it shouldn't be youth soccer. And I think that COVID is probably, we're in a good position now to kind of reevaluate what we want to do as coaches. So creating a we, not me, player-centered environment, it's leaving our ego at the door. It's creating an environment that we can help every player on our team, every player in our club, and also help ourselves. Because by us improving our coaching and making sure that we're devoting our coaching to improve the player development, both on the field and off the field, that's going to make us a more well-rounded coach. So it's not It's not a you, not me environment. It's we, because we're all together. And that's kind of the environment that we harness within our club at AYSO 300. So we want to create an environment designed to assist the development of each individual player. So again, it's just the varying levels of ability, varying levels of anxiety coming out of COVID. We need to create this environment that we can be as inclusive as possible, help everyone at what stage they are in development, or coming out of COVID, what stage of comfortability that they're in. We want to make sure that training sessions are challenging, but we want players to have fun. I had a conversation with a coach from another club last week, and he said, this is an opportunity coming out of COVID to get kids to love the game again. We want kids to actually enjoy what they do. And sometimes that gets lost, and it's gotten lost on me as a coach sometimes, that we make demands of players, and we want them just to come out of this and actually enjoy what they do. We want to get players active from the outset, because as I said earlier, they've been sitting in front of a computer. They're probably still, for the next 6 months to the end of the year, they're probably going to spend a lot of time in front of a computer still. So anything we can do to get them active. In the US at grassroots level, we've got the play, practice, play method. If we can get the kids in and do 3v3s, 4v4s at the very start of a session, and that gets them active before you go into your actual learning portion of your practice session, that's brilliant. And then at the very end, and I've done this for years, the last 10-15 minutes, and I do this with adults, I do it with kids, let the kids play. You've done your coaching. If you're confident in your ability as a coach, you do your coaching and just give them 10-15 minutes at the end where you just oversee a game, but you don't need to jump in and coach. Just let the kids play and let them have that enjoyment. Next up would be preseason team building exercises. Create some preseason activities to build interaction among teammates. So if you're on the field, and I know people that are on this webinar, some people are on the field already, some people are still in lockdown. So if you're on the field, one thing that I would do is bucket ball. You might have seen it online before. People call it bin ball, where you put a bin or a bucket 15 yards away from a group of 4 players, and then have another group the other side of them. They've got to try and keep the ball up for 15 yards and try and get the ball in the bucket. It's simple. It just builds a little bit of teamwork, gets players thinking again. If you're if you're still in lockdown, don't wait for it to end before you start doing team building exercises. Again, something we've done, which our club was lucky enough to have the FAI coach education department come out and spend a week with us in 2019, and the Irish U15 head coach Jason Donoghue gave a presentation on how they work with international standard players. Something similar to this here. Have players devise a code of conduct to return via breakout rooms, so you can break them up into smaller groups, come up with a code of conduct, and then when you get them back into their bigger group, then you can decide on what's to be agreed. You're the coach, so you'll have the final say, but once you let the players make those decisions, I believe that'll give them that little bit of ownership. It gets makes the players more comfortable as they're coming back into your environment as well, and gets them back among friends, because ultimately, again, when we go back to that enjoyment factor, we want to get them back interacting with each other and interacting with friends. I just went about if you're out of lockdown, but positive team building exercises get the player back in contact with coaches and teammates, and ultimately it's going to have a good impact on the player's mental health when they return to the field. Number 3 is respect player boundaries and concerns. And this, for me, probably if you can take anything away from this webinar, this is probably one of the most important, if not the most important thing. And we've seen it because we were back on the field in September. So returning to training, it's going to have varying levels of anxiety for each individual player regarding how kind of you open up. Your environment opens up, like in the UK, if you open up where you can do small group training, or you can open up to do full. Just don't expect all of your players to get back into that full training environment on day one. You might have in a squad of 20, you might have 15 that want to do that, and that's great, but what are we going to do for that other 5? And as a coach, we need to acknowledge that, and we need to kind of figure out how can we help that player or those 5 players that maybe just aren't ready yet. Going off of America, players may want to train with a mask, and we're seeing that. And right now, all our players indoor have to train and play games with a mask. If a player wants to do that, we have to support them as a coach. You know, don't make it obvious that this one child is not wearing a mask or this one player is not wearing a mask. Let's make sure that we acknowledge it, we support it, and we let them do what they feel most comfortable doing. And then adapt, you know, with your sessions, you need to adapt. Kind of the way that I'm structuring sessions right now, and the way that we've kind of done it throughout the fall, is your warm-up will always be, we'll try and make it as individual as possible. Then when it comes to your technical practice, we'll do it where maybe you've got groups of 3 or 4, smaller groups where they will, you can do passing drills, you can do stuff that's unopposed. And then for the kids that want to get into the more kind of regular method where they want to be in those bigger groups, you can do that towards the end. So if you can get your maybe 35 to 45 minute session where it's still all smaller groups, if you can adapt to that, that's great. You know, anything that just help those players ease into it. And then after a couple of weeks, maybe you can start getting back into your normal training sessions. Number 4, acknowledge all your players at training and at games. As I've learned over the last couple of years, the players really look up to the coach more than any other adult. You know, players, some kids love school, but a lot of kids don't love school, so they don't maybe acknowledge their teacher in the way that they acknowledge us as coaches. You know, most kids want to play soccer, so if they want to play soccer, they want to impress us. So it's important to us that we impress them. You know, we've got to make sure that we have a good environment, that we can interact with everyone. So going back again to COVID as well, players have had limited in-person interaction. So it's important that we make all of our players feel important. And this is something, again, when the FEI coach education came to town, something I learned is at the end of your training sessions or your games, call in those who you haven't interacted with or you haven't had much interaction with at the end of a training session, and just tell them, you know, just letting you know, I didn't talk to you too much at training today, but I feel like you've done a good job. Don't dismiss that influence that you have over your players. Don't dismiss how good that player will feel. And kind of when I'm talking about the players in that would be, you've got your top players, maybe top 5 players in your team. You've got maybe your bottom 5 that you need to kind of encourage a little bit more. It's those players in the middle that, you know, we don't praise, we don't do anything with. Anything you can do just to help them, help build up their confidence, either coming out of COVID or just in general. I mean, I started doing it right after that FEI thing, and the response you get from your players, just building them up, or just seeing that feeling, seeing how they feel after you just acknowledge them. It's just, for me, it's very important just to make sure that we build up everyone. Number 5, we want to give feedback and set attainable goals. So what you should do with your players is you should provide feedback at pre-season, mid-season, and post-season. I've seen a lot of programs out here in the States, and they might give some feedback in pre-season, and then they give post-season feedback and stuff to work on, because we have a break in the winter time. What we done at our program this year is we'll do a little bit of feedback individually or as a team in pre-season. By the middle of the season, every player will have an individual evaluation, and we'll set them short-term attainable goals that players can work towards throughout the season. So we don't want players, you know, to play tiki-taka football at U9. For some players individually, we might just, in America, there's a habit for a lot of players where they don't open up their body when they're receiving the ball. They'll receive it on the front foot all the time. A lot of my players, that was the feedback I gave them. And then in training, I just keep reinforcing that's something to work on. And that's something that, to me, I think is pretty attainable over a 2 or 3 month period for them to achieve. And that's just going to build up their confidence. Again, if they see that they're achieving it and they're improving, then you can move on to other stuff. But I think as coaches, we need to be realistic in our goals. You know, we need to make sure, and it should be a goal that is representative of the individual, not of the team, or not of your best 5. It has to be representative of wherever they are in your squad. And again, players who see that they're making this progress, they're going to feel a lot better about themselves. And then the last point is self-reflection on the coaching process. I think every coaching course now is telling you the importance of self-reflection. And it's important that we reflect on our performance and how we help our players. It helps our own mental health. I know from my point of view, reflecting on my session, I'm quite critical of myself. So it just helps to acknowledge the things that went well and the things that can be improved. And, looking at it from a player perspective, reflect on our session just to see if did the players or did the majority of the players get out of the session what you hoped, what you had planned for. I think planning your session is important, that you have that to reflect back on. And that's something I've been guilty of in previous years, that I don't plan or I don't write out a physical plan. If you can write out a physical plan, you can reflect on it, and then it just helps you gauge how you've helped your players. And then based on the reflections, on your own reflections, plan on what to do next time to help your players. Just as I say, anything at all that we can do as coaches to help our players moving forward is going to be beneficial. I don't have the point in here, but just before I kind of wrap up, I think it's important as coaches that, as I said at the very beginning, COVID has had a tough effect, I think, on the majority of the world's mental health, and it's kind of at the forefront of everybody's mind right now. So I think it's important when we're self-reflecting, like reflect on your own mental health as well. Just acknowledge it. If you're having a bad day, acknowledge that. Make sure that you're having a bad day, accept it, and then just move forward. What's very important is we can't let our bad day, we can't put that on the kids that we coach. We have to put a brave face on them. We have to make sure, because they've had so many setbacks in the past 12, 13 months that we need to provide them that outlet to get back playing. So just in conclusion, we as coaches, we play a crucial role in getting young players active during and post-COVID times, depending on where we are in terms of opening up, whether you're in the UK or Ireland, or whether you're here in the States. Be open-minded. I think as coaches, we need to be open-minded. We need to be respectful of all players' needs. I think that's crucial. And then just be prepared to adjust your sessions as you need to do. That to me, again, very, very important. So that is all my presentation. Please go easy on me. But if anybody has any questions or anything, feel free to shout.